They say a mother's heart is like a sixth sense. I knew something was wrong even before the phone rang, as if a string stretched to its limit deep within my soul had snapped, emitting a final resonant sound. Yet the evening had started so well. I was sorting old photographs into albums, something I had long intended to do but never got around to. There was Russia, serious beyond his years, in a white shirt at his graduation with a medal on his chest. Next to him was Dima, then still a teenager, proudly embracing his older brother with an infectious smile and tousled hair that refused to be tamed. The photographs preserved happy moments, making me forget how many difficult days there had been between them. I put the kettle on, took out my favorite cinnamon cookies, and looked out the window. A light drizzle was falling, but the apartment was warm and cozy. The floor lamp cast a soft light, turning an ordinary evening into a small celebration. Dima had promised to drop by today as usual, without specifying a time. "I'll be there, Mom, I promise," he had said in the morning over the phone. I didn't press him for a specific time. I had long grown accustomed to his unique sense of time. Suddenly, amidst this coziness and quiet joy, an inexplicable anxiety washed over me. My heart began to race, my palms grew sweaty, and I set the photo album aside. I stood up, walked to the window, and cautiously pulled back the curtain. The street was empty and dark, with only the streetlights reflecting off the wet asphalt, turning it into a mirror. The phone rang, startling me. At this hour, calls usually bring bad news. At first, I thought it might be Dmitri, who was always late and often forgot to let me know he was running behind. But the voice on the other end was unfamiliar, official, and dry, the kind that sticks in your memory along with the words spoken. "Vera Nikolaevna, Andrei Sokolov has been in an accident. He is in hospital number 15. I listened but didn't hear the rest. Before my eyes stood my Andrusha. The eldest, reliable, the one you could always count on. Fragments of thoughts raced through my mind, not this, not him. What will I tell Dima? Bag, keys, documents, taxi, please hurry. I turned away from the window, wiping away tears. The rain intensified, blurring the world outside into a hazy canvas. Drops pounded on the roof of the car, merging into a monotonous hum, like the beating of a frightened heart. At the traffic lights, the red light seemed to mock me. It felt like time had stopped. 32 minutes felt like an eternity. In the hospital corridor, the smell of chlorine was overpowering. I had always feared these smells. Over 58 years of life, I had seen these walls, the silent doctors with unreadable faces, and the relatives frozen in anticipation of a verdict. The reception area greeted me with bustling indifference. The duty nurse, without looking up from her computer, pointed to the corridor on the right. I walked down the endless hallway, feeling my anxiety grow with each step. When I finally found the duty doctor, he was flipping through a medical history, squinting with fatigue. "Are you the mother?" he asked, giving me a professional look that seemed to gauge the depth of my despair with precision. "Yes," I replied. "Multiple contusions, concussion, and a fracture of the left arm," the doctor listed. "His condition is stable. He was very lucky, considering the force of the impact in this weather and road conditions. You can see him, but only briefly. He is under painkillers, so he might be drowsy." "What about the person who hit his car?" I blurted out, even though at that moment I was most concerned about my son's condition. "The car fled the scene," the doctor replied drily. "The police have already been here, but your son couldn't provide a clear description of the vehicle. Maybe tomorrow, when the effects of the medications wear off, he'll remember more details." The next 10 meters to the ward felt like walking through a minefield, fearing what I would see. Over 15 years without a husband, I had learned to be strong, but now I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. I was trembling, my knees were buckling. Even when Vitya died so suddenly from a heart attack, I held myself together. Back then, the necessity to be a support for the boys kept me going. Now, there was no need to pretend. His arm was in a cast. I couldn't hold back and started crying when I saw him like that. He had always seemed invincible, a rock, even at 13 when his peers were still playing football in the courtyard. He was already earning money by helping a neighbor fix bicycles. At 17, he took on half of the family's burdens when we lost our father. He never complained or asked for help. And now he lay there so fragile and vulnerable, with traces of dried blood on his temple that the nurse hadn't completely washed off. I carefully sat on the edge of the bed, afraid to disturb him or cause him pain. "Mom, don't," he winced, noticing my tears. "It's okay, really." "What happened if—" I carefully sat down, trying not to disturb the eavesdrop. A car came into the oncoming lane. I didn't have time to swerve, and the other driver fled the scene, he said, looking away. "He was seriously injured, but he'll be okay," a voice behind me said. It was a young police officer with a notepad in his hands. Raindrops glistened on his uniform. "I'm sorry to intrude," he nodded to me and turned to Andre. "We need your statement. Do you remember the make or model of the car?" "No," Andre closed his eyes. "It was dark and the car was blue, I think, or black." Something in his voice made me tense up. Over 32 years, I had come to know my son like an old melody. From the first notes, I could tell what he was feeling. Andre wasn't good at lying, and now he was lying, awkwardly and obviously. "He's not hiding anything," the officer made a note in his notepad. "If you remember anything else, give us a call." He handed over a business card. "Fleeing the scene of an accident carries serious penalties." Andre nodded slightly. When the policeman left, he exhaled as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "You're not telling me something," I said softly. "Mom," his smile was crooked with pain. "The painkillers are making me groggy. I can barely think straight." I wanted to insist, but at that moment my phone rang. The screen displayed the name of our neighbor, Yevgenia Petrovna. "Vera Dima is at my place. He crashed his car, the whole front is smashed. He's sitting on the stairs and can't get up. I would have helped him to your apartment myself, but you know my back." My heart sank. A blue car with a smashed front end. It couldn't be a coincidence. "I'm on my way," I managed to say and turned to Andre. His face was expressionless, but his eyes held understanding. "Go, Mom," he said softly. "Dima needs you more right now." "You know, don't you?" I asked, already guessing the answer. "Yes," he replied, turning to look out the window. I found Dima on the 5th floor landing, disheveled, with a swollen face and empty eyes. He reeked of alcohol and something else, fear, guilt, despair. His favorite denim jacket, the one I had given him for his last birthday, was crumpled and torn at the elbow. There was a fresh scratch on his cheek. "Dima," I sat down next to him, touching his shoulder. "What happened if—" He looked up at me with glassy, dilated eyes. "Mom, I've ruined everything. Let's go home," I helped him up. "We need to talk." Yevgenia Petrovna, watching us from her slightly open door, shook her head. "Vera, he's such a good boy, but lately—" "Thank you for calling," I interrupted her. Right now, the last thing I wanted was to hear her opinions. Dima leaned on me, mumbling apologies as we struggled up to the 7th floor. In the apartment, I sat him down in the kitchen and turned on the bright light. He winced, shielding his eyes. "Too bright, Mom," he said. "No," I replied more firmly than I intended. "I want to see your eyes." I made him a strong coffee, my hands shaking as the cup rattled against the saucer. I looked at my younger son and, for the first time, saw a stranger, frightened, lost, nothing like the sunny boy I had always indulged and protected. "Where's your card?" I asked it. "Downstairs," he lowered his head. "Show me," I said. We went out into the rain. Dima seemed to have sobered up a bit, but still walked unsteadily, holding onto the railing. A dark blue sedan with a smashed headlight and crumpled hood stood there, the bumper was barely hanging on. I leaned against the wall, feeling the ground slip from under my feet. "Was it you?" I asked, my voice sounding strange and distant. "Did you hit Andre and drive away?" Dima remained silent, not looking up. The rain intensified, turning us into wet, miserable figures in the middle of the nighttime courtyard. "Answer me," I shouted at him for the first time in my life. "Was it you?" "I didn't know it was Andre," he finally said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "I swear. I didn't see who it was dark." I panicked. The slap was loud and sharp. I had never hit my children before. Dima didn't flinch or step back, he stood there, accepting the blow as if it were deserved. "How could you?" I gasped, choking on anger and pain. "Leave a person on the road, your own brother. I don't want to hear your excuses. You were drinking, you got behind the wheel, you caused an accident, and you drove away. Your brother could have died. He's lying there soaked and miserable, and there's something so defenseless and open about him that makes me remember him as a 5-year-old. He once broke my favorite vase and hid in the closet, not out of fear of punishment, but out of fear of disappointing me. Mummy, I'm bad," he cried then. And now in his eyes I saw the same fear, not of the consequences, but of being unworthy of love. Dima slumped onto a bench, covering his face with his hands. "I'll go to the police myself," he said. "No," I interrupted him. "Now you'll go home and sober up." He obediently stood up and shuffled towards the entrance. I stood by the wrecked car for a while longer. The rain washed away everything, tears, dirt, but not the guilt, neither his nor mine. Because deep down, beneath the layers of anger and fear, I knew that I was also to blame. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. The photographs on the wall showed 2 boys, fair-haired, serious Andre, and dark-haired, always smiling Dima. They were as different as the sun and the moon. 15 years ago, when Vitya died, Andre was 18, and Dima was 12. The elder grew up overnight, becoming the family support, while the younger one withdrew into himself. I threw all my strength into pulling Dima out of his shell of grief, protecting and shielding him. Even when I shouldn't have. We lived on my teacher's salary. Andre immediately found a job at an auto shop, first washing cars, then gradually taking on simple repairs. The owner trusted him more and more. He studied at night school, paying for his education himself, and never complained, although I saw how tired he was. But Dima, I didn't let him work. I insisted he focus on his studies, wanting him to have a normal childhood. When the neighbor complained about Dima breaking a window, I paid for it silently. When the class teacher called about his absences, I made up excuses. He hadn't coped with his father's death, I told myself. Trying to protect him from life's blows, which had fallen so heavily on his older brother. I tried to balance their lives, to be a bridge between them, not a dividing wall. But instead, I made Andre grow up too fast and left Dima a child, depriving him of the opportunity to grow stronger. By protecting Dima from life's hardships, I pushed him into infantilism, from which he escaped through alcohol. The phone rang again. It was Anna, Andre's wife. "How is Heb?" I asked it. "He's sleeping," she replied, her voice tired. "I'll stay with him until morning." "Anna, do you know what happened?" There was a pause. "I can guess," she said softly. "A blue car, Dima's car." "Yes," I confirmed. "Vera Nikolaevna, Andre wanted to meet with him yesterday. He's been worried about Dima for a long time. Ever since Svetlana left, Dima's been drinking too much." "Why didn't he tell me?" "You know Andre," Anna said with a sad smile in her voice. "He always protects his brother, especially from you. He's afraid you'll be disappointed in Dima." I hung up the phone and sat in the dark for a long time. My love had protected Dima from life, but hadn't protected him from himself. I was so afraid of being disappointed in him that I didn't notice how he was becoming disappointed in himself. Now, he was paying for my mistakes. Every time I chose which son needed what, I built a wall between them. For Andre, it was responsibility and strictness. For Dima, it was protection and indulgence. But what if both needed both? And I just didn't want to see what didn't fit into my picture of the world. I looked into his room. He was sleeping fully clothed in his wet clothes. I carefully removed his boots and covered him with a blanket. In the light from the street lamp, his face looked so childlike, as if he were my 12-year-old Dima again, crying into his pillow at night so I wouldn't hear. How hard it is to lose someone you love, and how hard it is to see someone you love destroying themselves. On the bedside table was a photograph of Dima and Svetlana on the beach. Happy and tanned. It was their last vacation together. A month later she left, saying she was tired of his irresponsibility and immaturity. I comforted him then, telling him she wasn't worth his love. But maybe she was right. In the morning Dima came to the kitchen sober but with red eyes. He carefully closed the door behind him as if afraid to wake me, even though I hadn't slept. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. "Mom," his voice was hoarse. I silently poured him some coffee. "I remember everything," he said, sitting down across from me. "Svetlana and I met yesterday. She told me she's getting married. I went to a bar and got drunk. I saw a little boy in front of me. Not a 27-year-old man. I got behind the wheel. I don't remember why I decided to drive to your place. The road was empty and I was speeding. Then a car appeared out of nowhere. I didn't have time to brake. And you drove away." I finished for him. "Yes," he closed his eyes. I panicked. Even if he had died. Dima shuddered. I couldn't live with that. We sat in silence. Outside the window, a new day was beginning. The rain had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds, ridiculously beautiful for such a conversation. Dima sat looking at his hands, a new, heavy expression in his eyes, as if he were seeing himself from the outside for the first time. "If I don't take responsibility for this now, I'll never be able to respect myself," he said softly. "Are you sure?" I asked it. "I have to," he replied. And then I realized that the boy in front of me was no longer a boy. He was a man ready to face the consequences of his actions. "We'll go together," I said. "First to the hospital. You need to ask your brother for forgiveness, and then wherever you decide." On the way to the hospital we barely spoke. Dima looked out the taxi window, clenching and unclenching his fists. I saw the fear in his eyes, not of punishment or the police, but of facing his brother whom he had let down. "What if he doesn't want to see me?" Dima asked as we approached the ward. "Then you'll have to accept that," I replied. "But I know my sons better than they think." The ward was dimly lit. Andrei was looking out the window. When Dima entered, there was no surprise or anger on his face. "Hey," Dima said softly. "How are you?" "Been better," Andrei replied. "It was my car," Dima said. "I know," Andrei said. I recognized it right away. Dima covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. "I didn't want this. I didn't know it was you." "I'm sorry." "I know," Andrei interrupted him. "But that's not the point, Dima. The point is that you got behind the wheel drunk. You knew about my drinking. Svetlana called me a month ago crying. She still loves you, but she's marrying someone else out of spite." Andrei paused. "If you relapse again..." He smiled bitterly, and in that smile there was more pain than anger. "I didn't think our talk would end like this." Dima looked at him in disbelief. "She asked you to talk to me." "Yes," Andrei said. "But I didn't think it would come to this." Dima covered his face with his hands. "God, what have I done?" Andrei reached out with his good hand and touched Dima's shoulder. "But you're my brother. I'll pay for the car repairs." "No," Dima said firmly. "I'll pay for everything. I'll go to the police." "Why?" Andrei looked at him seriously. "To go to jail," Dima said hollowly. "To quit drinking. To find a decent job. I saw how your shoulders were shaking. I don't know how to live anymore." "We'll figure it out together," Andrei said awkwardly, hugging him. "Just stop running away." I looked at them and couldn't shake the strange feeling that I was watching the scene from the outside. Something had shifted, fallen into place. Andrei, always the strong one, lay helpless, but he was still a support for his brother. And Dima, whom I was used to protecting, seemed adult in his remorse. Quietly I left the ward and closed the door behind me. In the corridor, I sat down on a bench, overwhelmed by the bitter realization of my own blindness. All these years I had seen only what I wanted to see. Fear of losing them, fear of not coping without my husband, had made me create convenient images in my mind: strong Andrei, who could handle anything, and vulnerable Dima, who needed protection. I hadn't noticed how Andrei looked at me with tired eyes, waiting for support that I gave to Dima. I hadn't wanted to see how Dima had stopped fighting his problems, expecting his mother to solve everything. I had pushed him into infantilism, from which he escaped through alcohol. A few minutes later, Dima emerged from the ward with red eyes but a strangely calm face. "Mom," he said, sitting down next to me. "I'm still going to the police." "Are you sure?" I asked, searching his eyes for any trace of doubt but finding none. "I have to," he said. Something new had appeared in his eyes, a determination I had never seen before. "I'll find a doctor," he said. "I don't want to live like this anymore. Andrei won't turn me in." "I know," I said softly. "But that makes it even harder for him." He looked at me, and I saw his face changing, a new resolve replacing the old fears. "I'll go to rehab," he said. "I'll find a way to make things right." I looked at my son and saw a man who had found his path after years of wandering. My throat tightened. I had loved them both, but in the wrong ways. I had protected Dima when I should have taught him to protect himself. And Andrei, he had seemed so strong that I forgot he needed support too. "Mom, it's not your fault," Dima said. I smiled through my tears. "Not entirely. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do afterward." "And what do we do afterward?" he asked. "We fix what we can and learn to live with what we can't. We forgive others and ourselves." I ran my hand through his hair as I used to do when he was a child. "Do you know what true maternal love is? It's loving your child so much that you're willing to let them go, even to prison, if it makes them better." Dima looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "Let's go," he said firmly. At the police station, Dima confessed quickly and clearly, not hiding any details. The officer listened attentively, filling out the report. I looked at my son and, for the first time, felt proud of his maturity. The frightened boy from yesterday was gone, replaced by a man ready to face the consequences. "You were a coward yesterday," I said. "But today you're here. And that's what matters." I squeezed his shoulder as we left the station. The months leading up to the trial changed their relationship. Dima didn't wait for the verdict. He enrolled in a rehabilitation program for alcohol addiction. Andrei visited us, gradually rebuilding their bond. They talked about projects and the future, truly listening to each other for the first time in years. The trial was inevitable. Andrei refused to press civil charges, which worked in Dima's favor. The lawyer helped negotiate a plea bargain. Dima didn't try to avoid responsibility. He cooperated with the investigation, had no prior convictions, and was actively undergoing treatment for alcohol addiction. All of this contributed to a lenient sentence. Dima received a suspended sentence and community service. I remember how Andrei hugged his brother in the courtroom, not hiding his tears. I stood to the side, watching my boys support each other without me. In that moment, I realized that they no longer needed me as they once had. They had found each other, bridging the gap that I had partly created with my selective love. 6 months later, we sat at a table in Andrei's apartment. Dima was working at his brother's construction company, showing an unexpected talent for design. He didn't drink and attended support groups. When he entered the courtroom that day, his back was straight and his gaze was clear. I saw in him the features of his father, the same jawline, the same furrow between his eyebrows. Visha had stood before the school director the same way, admitting to breaking a window. Ready to face the consequences without excuses or evasions. "I did it, so I'll take responsibility," he had said. And he had left this life with the same straightforwardness, looking his fate in the eye. Svetlana didn't return, but she started visiting him. I saw them talking softly, carefully, as if getting to know each other again. Her wedding didn't take place. Maybe it's for the best, Dima said, raising a glass of juice. Second chances. I looked at my sons, different but equal. I no longer had to choose who needed protection and who didn't. They were both simply my children, with their weaknesses and strengths, their light and shadow. After dinner, Dima and I sat on the balcony. He looked at the nighttime city, and there was something peaceful in his expression. "What are you thinking about?" I asked it. "About how strangely everything turned out," he said. "The accident, it actually saved me." "Saved you from what?" I asked it. "From myself," he said. "I had to face who I really am." "Thank you for not saving me then." He turned to me. "For saving me from responsibility." I hugged him, and he rested his head on my shoulder, not seeking protection this time, but offering closeness. My maternal heart, wounded but wiser, had healed.